Hi students, this section is on multiplication of real numbers. So there's different rules when we're multiplying integers, real numbers. So the first rule when you're multiplying, it says when you multiply two negative numbers, your answer is going to be positive. So that's a rule. So for instance, if you take a negative number and multiply it by a negative number, you're going to get a positive answer. An example of this could be -2 times -2. Negative times negative is going to give me a +4. Another rule when you're multiplying numbers is when you multiply a negative integer by a positive one, your answer is going to be negative. So for instance, if you take a negative integer and multiply it by a positive, you're going to get a negative answer. So our example here would be if we take, let's say, -3 and multiply it by +4, we're going to get an answer of -12. Let's just look at some of these properties here. So there's various properties when you're multiplying integers as well. The first one is the commutative property. Please write down everything you see in this chart. Commutative property is the order in which two numbers are multiplied. It does not change the product, meaning it does not change the answer based on the order it's written. So for instance, if you have A times B and switch the order to B times A, you're going to get the same answer. 3 times -2 or -2 times 3, you're going to get -6 on each side there. The associative property of multiplication is the way you group three numbers when multiplying. This does not change the answer either. So you're placing the parentheses in different spots using the associative property. So for instance, you might have A times B times C. Notice on the left side the parentheses are between A and B, and on the right side your parentheses are between B and C. So our example here, you have -6 times 2 times 3, and then on the right side you have -6, and then the parentheses are between 2 and 3. So -6 times 2 is going to give me -12 times 3, which gives me -36. And then here we have -6 times 2 times 3 is 6. -6 times +6, excuse me, is going to give me -36. Equals the same. The identity property means the product of a number, so the answer of a number and 1 is the number. So for instance, if we have 1 times A, that's going to give me A. So if we have -4 times 1, my answer is just going to be -4. An integer multiplied by 1 just gives you the value of the integer for your answer. The property of 0 is when the product of a number times 0, your answer is just going to be 0. So here, if we have -2 times 0, your answer is just going to be 0. And then properties of opposites. The product of a number and -1 is the opposite of the number. So here we have -1 times A equals -A, which means -1 times -3. So negative times negative gives me a +3. And we talked a little bit about that on the previous slide. Working with opposites. So let's practice some problems here working with multiplication of integers, and you'll see problems like this in your bookwork that we do in class as well. For A here we have 9 times -3. So this is a positive multiplied by a negative. So my answer is going to be a negative. Well, 9 times 3 is 27, and that will be my answer for A. For B, let's solve it going from left to right, using orders of operations. So let's first multiply -2 times -half. And -2 times -half, well, half of 2 is 1. Negative times negative is positive. So that would be a +1 times -3 times -5. So now I take 1 times -3 to get -3. And -3 times -5, that's going to give me an answer of +15. Notice, this is a pretty easy problem, but I wrote down the steps, I showed my work, and I expect you to do that in your bookwork and on quizzes and tests. These processes are easy, but I need you to make sure you show your work. Next here, we're just working with variables, n. So we have negative n times negative n. Well, when you're multiplying variables, when there's no number involved, how many n's do we have? We have 2 n's. So we write this using an exponent. So this is taking a negative and multiplying by a negative here to get a positive answer. So negative n times negative n is going to give me an answer of n, but how many n's are we multiplying by? 2. So this is going to actually be n squared for my answer. For D, now we have here negative y to the 4th. So what that means is negative y times negative y times negative y times negative y. So if we take negative y times negative y, that's going to give me, well, if we solve this and multiply it, negative y times negative y is going to give me a positive y. Then if we take a positive y, multiply it by negative y, that's going to give me a negative y. Negative y times negative y is just going to give me a positive y. So my answer here is just going to be a positive y. Y to the 4th would be a positive answer of just y. When you have an exponent of, when it's an even number like this, and you're multiplying it out, even numbers, exponents, you're going to have a positive answer. If this were an odd number like 5, then your answer is going to be negative. Because if you think about it, multiplying negatives with an even, it's going to end up being positive. Multiplying negatives with an odd would give you a negative answer. We can practice some more problems like this in class. Example 2, we are going to evaluate the expression when x equals negative 2. So we're going to substitute negative 2 in for x. So what we have here is 3 times x, which is negative 2 squared, minus 5 times negative 2. When we solve this, we need to think of orders of operation. So we're going to work with the grouping and our exponent first, which is this negative 2 squared. So that would be negative 2 times negative 2, which is going to give me positive 4. So we have here 3 times positive 4 minus 5 times negative 2. So let's solve going from left to right. So we have 3 times 4 is 12 minus 5 times negative 2. And then when we take this, we would do 12 times negative 5 times negative 2. Well, negative 5 times negative 2 is going to give me a positive 10. So what we have here now is 12 plus 10, because negative times negative is positive. And when we solve this, 12 plus 10 is going to give me an answer of 22. So that would be it for this section, and we'll practice some more of this in your book in class.